Welcome back to another episode of the Agronomy Answers podcast. On today's show, I brought my dad back to get into another lesson from Dad. Today's lesson is help farmers make more money on their farm.
All right, and just to clarify here, these were lessons from my dad, so Zach's grandpa. But anyway, this was one of my dad's big philosophies, was trying to help farmers do the jobs that paid them well. So, for example, the story was always, and we've talked about this before, $100 an hour jobs. And it was, hey, try to find jobs on the farm that pay you $100 an hour. So that's where the helping farmers do these types of jobs really comes in. And so it's not, oh, we're going to teach you how to paint a fence, because that back in the day was a $5 an hour job. It was, well, let's take a look at planting, harvesting. Tiling is one of the biggest things that a lot of people haven't been doing. And hey, we want to take a look at that. How about soil testing, field scouting, anything like that? That's really where we wanted to focus. And so when it comes to Ag PhD or Hefty Seed Company or anything else, we're all about talking to farmers in terms of, how do you do this job? How do you control this weed? How do you get the tile to work well? And at the same time, everybody's cost conscious. So we're trying to figure out how we can do this job as inexpensively as possible. But the big thing that my dad talked about all the time is, hey, on our farm, we want to do everything ourselves, because nobody's going to care about our farm like we are.
So since this is the Agronomy Answers podcast, we're talking about Hefty Seed Company. This is something that has been in Hefty Seed Company. Is it mostly since the beginning? Because in the book, you say that other companies basically try to do everything for the farmer, where you're sectioned off with just farmers that want to do more themselves. Has that always been from the beginning the goal?
Yeah, so we've never done custom application, and that's basically what it comes down to. So a lot of our competitors out there, they do custom application for fertilizer, for herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, that kind of stuff, and we don't. So spraying is one of the biggest things, and that goes back to day one with my dad's business when it started out, was just trying to help farmers with sprayers. And so at one point, we actually sold sprayers, and we sold spray control systems. I mean, it was very rudimentary back then, what we had compared to today. And there was no GPS and auto steer and all this fancy stuff we have now, and you couldn't send prescriptions to vary rates and all this other stuff. But it was very helpful to farmers, because they're like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I've never sprayed before. I mean, when my dad started, there were a lot of farmers that they weren't using herbicides at all. So it's just amazing how far this has come, really, in just a couple of generations on the farm.
So when you talk about to farmers about doing $100 an hour jobs versus the $5 an hour jobs, in the book you have a couple oppositions that they might say, like they don't know how to do that thing.
Right.
They don't have the time to do that thing. Is it worth the money to do that thing? And there's just a few different things that might be in the opposite side of that. What do you talk about when they say those things?
Well, here's the whole thing. It all depends on what your goals are in life. If your goal is to have life as easy as possible, well, then you can't expect to have as much money as possible. And so for my dad, he was always focused on, we want to make as much money as possible. That's our goal. And that means we're going to be a little uncomfortable. We're going to have to learn things that we didn't know before. We're going to have to try some things. We're going to have to experiment. And sometimes you're going to fail with that. A lot of people don't like failure, and that's part of life. And if you want to get ahead financially, then you have to look at, okay, how am I spending my time? Because that's really what it amounts to. And that's going back to the $100 an hour jobs versus the $5 an hour jobs. I get it that you don't want to do your own spraying, maybe. You don't want to do certain jobs, but it's like, well, this job pays this other job pays this. And a lot of people say, well, I want to enjoy life and I want to have fun. You know what's the most fun for me? Making money. So it's great being out on the farm. I've always loved being outside, and I mean, growing crops. I mean, we used to raise hogs and cattle and everything else. I've actually always had fun. I mean, it's awesome, but I'd rather have more money than less. That makes it more fun, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so there's one quote that I need to read out of this book. I think it's my favorite quote from this chapter, and it's basically, it says, don't let someone else have all the fun in life doing $100 an hour jobs while you spend your time on the $5 an hour jobs. Figure out how to do those $100 an hour jobs yourself.
Yeah, right. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we shouldn't have really good advisors and things like that. And sometimes you're kind of stuck. You have to hire certain things out. So just as an example, on our own farm, we do almost all our own tiling. The first project we did not do ourselves was one where we had to put a lift station in, and we could do that. We did a couple lift stations for somebody else, but this one had to be 20 feet deep in the ground on the river bottom with a relatively high water table. And I'm like, okay, I'm not real sharp, but I know this. When I dig down in kind of wetter conditions, what ends up happening is the sidewalls fall in. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not putting everybody at risk going down 20 feet when we're just trying this for the first time. So that's part of this thing too, is if we're going to do something new, we're going to look for that $100 an hour job, which this would have been. It would have been a $1,000 an hour job or more. We have to make sure that safety is always number one. And that was the thing that I'm super happy. So yeah, my dad yelled at me all the time, and I got a lot of things I can complain about, okay? But I do appreciate how safety was always number one. And he had nothing to do with this particular project, but it was in the back of my mind for our people. And I'm like, no, that's too much risk when it's something that's brand new. We've never done that before. Let's hire an expert, somebody who has done that, because it's deep, it's very risky, and I don't want any problems.
Yeah, and there's a lot of certain scenarios that are like that. But then on the flip side, one of the quotes you talk about in the book is, if you don't know any $100 an hour jobs, well, you can learn them. There's always more opportunity to learn new things and to try new things, because some of them can pay a lot more money than other ones do, and it's just kind of picking your battles, which is kind of what we talk about in the first lesson from Dad, $100 an hour jobs, picking the $100 an hour jobs versus the $5 an hour jobs.
But again, I'm going to go back to this failure thing, because I mean, and maybe it's always been this way, but people, I just feel, are afraid to fail. And you have to be willing to make mistakes. It's just, and this is one of the other lessons that's in there, is just you want to make the mistakes on a small scale. So we're willing to try all kinds of crazy stuff. And that's what I always say to people. I was just doing a meeting yesterday where I just said, look, almost anything you want to try on the farm, any stupid idea that you think, oh, that's never going to work or whatever, we've probably tried it. We do all kinds of dumb, crazy stuff, but whatever. That's how we learn. And I mean, we learn from the failures, but we're not afraid to make some of those failures, or make some of those mistakes, have some of those failures. That's the way it goes. But yeah, I guess I'm just always excited in agriculture, because we do have so many new technologies and new opportunities. And so when you bring up the $100 an hour jobs thing, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's whole different. Like even today, we have a drone on our farm. We never had a drone before. I mean, that wasn't even a thing just a few years ago. So we're willing to try some of that new stuff. And, sometimes you identify, hey, we could make this work. But what did it take? It took you getting a pilot's license. Well, I'm sure that was a little scary, cost a little bit of money, but now, hey, it's worth it, and we have all this experience now too.
Yeah, and on the flip side, it's kind of like in our operation right now. I mean, you're trying to live to 100, so you'll probably run the farm until you're 99 years old. Well, I'm going to be a lot older at that point before you actually take if you were going to take any ownership on anything. So it's hard when you're like, if whoever on the farm is writing all the checks, if you're not that person, you just feel like you don't have any ownership in it because you're not the one that's actually the final say.
Yeah,
so I feel like that's part of some of it too.
Okay, so this is one of the things too, and I don't think I've got anything like this in the book, but this is one of the things that my dad talked about sometimes. He's like, okay, somebody will walk into the office that's 60 years old, and we get all done, they kind of decide what they need, and the guy goes, well, I got to check with Dad first. He's the one that's writing the check. And Dad's 85 years old. It's like, at what point are we turning things over? Because the kid is 60 and still isn't the final decision maker. So yes, I'm 100% planning to live to be 100 years old. But I'm not going to hold on to everything. And even today, I try to delegate, let some of the decisions be made by other people, because my dad let me make a bunch of decisions when I was younger, and I'm very thankful for that. Now, let me just say, too, I overstepped my bounds many times. He kind of, to some degree, wanted that, but if I did fine, he would say nothing. If I made a mistake, then of course he'd yell at me to no end. But yeah, I am a believer anyway in turning things over to other people, delegating, trying to bring up the next generation, or just, I mean, other people who are great that work for us. It's a lot of fun having awesome people, but if they have no authority to make any decisions, pretty soon they're going to get frustrated.
Yeah, so we kind of got a little bit off topic on help farmers do more themselves, but that's one of the core business philosophies with Hefty Seed Company.
Yeah, it is. But that being said, do we do some things for farmers? Sure. I mean, we do some things for farmers, but I mean, when I go back to the number one thing of spraying, where kind of my dad started helping people do it themselves, we do want farmers to spray themselves, because you think about how many acres in the United States need to get sprayed and how few retailers or how few custom applicators there are. I mean, it's really challenging to get over all the acres very, very timely. And look at what's happened here over time. We're now finding that fungicides pay better, insecticides pay better. I think in part because we are just raising so much higher yields. I mean, our yields are way higher than they used to be. So because of that, we have a lot more humidity out there. We have a lot more plants. We have tighter row spacings, all these things that lead to more disease. And then less tillage means we have more insects. And so where I'm going with this is, I mean, we might spray 5 times in certain fields. 5 times. Well, that means we're going to need a lot more sprayers in the future. And you can only make the sprayers so big. We have a 120-foot boom. I don't expect we're going to have a 1,000-foot boom any day. You know, that's not going to happen. So I think we're just about to the maximum size for getting down the road, for, widening out in the field. I mean, anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot that needs to be done for spraying moving forward, and that is one of the biggest things we try to help farmers with.
There's a lot more that needs to be done in ag, and there's a lot more lessons from Dad that we'll cover in future episodes. Thanks for being on the show today.
You bet. Thanks.
And thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Agronomy Answers podcast. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.